In this video we're going to take a look at tier 2 of the HackTheBox starting point. It's called Don't Forget to Contemplate, and we've got 5 machines to go through. I'm going to do this a little bit differently to the tier 0 and tier 1 tracks where I did all 5 or 6 machines on a single video. I'm going to break these up into a separate video for each box just to cut down on the time, because I think tier 0 was like a 45-minute video and then tier 1 an hour and 15 minutes. And based on the recommended modules here of Windows and privilege escalation, I'm assuming these boxes are going to take a little bit longer, and I don't want it to end up being a 2.5–3 hour video that nobody watches. So I'm connected to the starting point VPN anyway. I'm not actually on the VIP server anymore, although I will need to get a VIP subscription in order to access these last 2 boxes. They're no longer all free, which they were throughout December. We're into January now. So it'll be interesting to see whether there's any difference using the non-VIP server to the VIP. I know in the first video, the tier 0 video, we were having some problems with the server disconnecting and stuff. I can't actually remember whether I was on the VIP server then or not, so yeah, we'll see how this goes. You can see that I've got ton 0 connected. We're connected to the VPN, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and just ping the machine and make sure we've got a connection, which we do. And let's go ahead and run an NMap scan. So we'll run NMap, we'll enumerate services, we'll run default scripts, we'll run it on all ports and just pass in that IP address. And we'll wait for this to come back. Let's see what sort of questions are being asked here anyway. So the first question is asking us what TCP port is hosting the database server. So we will need to wait for this to complete before we're able to determine that. I'll come back once the NMap scan's completed. Okay, so the NMap scan has come back now. We've got our open ports, and we can see some information here as well from the scripts that were run, which can give us an idea what we're going to be able to do with our SMB connection. But the question we were asked is what port is the database running on, and you can see here we've got Microsoft SQL Server 2017 and the port is 1433. So the answer to our first question is 1433. We submit that and we're asked what is the name of the non-administrative share over the SMB. So back over to our NMap scan, we can see we've got our SMB here. Let's go ahead and we can use something like SMBMap or SMBClient. I normally use SMBClient, so let me just actually see. I've not used SMBMap in a while. Let's try and actually let me just bring up the, okay, I need to type it correctly as well. Let me bring up the help menu. We've got some examples here, so we can pass in a username, a password, specify what domain we want to access, and then we've got --H for our IP address. You can see some more advanced examples here as well. So let me grab that IP address again. Let's do SMBMap, and let's just try just with the host. That comes back. Alright, didn't really come back with much of interest. Let's go ahead and try. We don't really have a username to try yet unless we just try administrator. Let me try that. -U administrator. Authentication error. Okay, so then we'd probably want to provide a password. Let's just first of all just try with a blank password. Authentication error. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go over to SMBClient, which we've used in the previous starting point machines, where we can use -L, put in the IP address. It's asking for Crystal's password, which is not going to be on the server, so that's something we need to bear in mind. I think in a previous example we had to specify the username as administrator here. But it does come back and tell us what shares we have access to, and we've got a comment there on them. Let's go ahead and try again just with, I can't remember if it's capital U, I think it is, administrator. Okay, interesting. So we can't actually bring back anything if we pass in the administrator user there. That's fine, but we were able to access the share names here anyway. And there is only one share here which doesn't have the $sign at the end, indicating it's an administrative share, so that's the backup share. So let's go and submit that as our second answer. It's also correct. What is the password identified in the file on the SMB share? Okay, so we need to go and try and actually access this backup share. Let's do the same thing again, SMBClient, but instead of passing in that -L, we need to add some slashes in here, and again then to say what share we want to access. I'm going to do backups, and let's just try and access that. Yep, we've got our prod.dts config, so we can hit tab here to get a list of the commands that we can run. We can type help to, I think did that just bring back the same commands? I think so. we can probably type help and then a specific command, and it'll give you then an example of how to actually use that command. So in our case here, we'll be using the get command. So we can, if we wanted to double check, we can do help get and see that we put in the name of a file that we want to get. Pretty self-explanatory. Let's get that prod.dts config and let's see what's in it. So we go through that, we can see that we've got this data source here with a password, megacorp123, and we have a user ID as well, SQL service. Okay, so let's I'm going to open up Sublime here and we'll just take a record of this username and password. So our domain there is Archetype, our user is SQL service, and then our password is megacorp123. And of course the question we were asked there was for the password, so let's go and enter that and see what it's looking for in the next task. It asks us, what script from the Impacket collection can be used in order to establish an authenticated connection to a Microsoft SQL server? Let's go and open up the Impacket GitHub and see what files we have available. I don't think we've actually used this yet in the starting point, but we have talked about it. It was mentioned in some previous boxes, I can't remember exactly which, but we can see here anyway, it's a collection of Python classes for working with network protocols, and we've got a list of different protocols here which are featured. We've got some installation instructions. I'm just trying to wonder where we can get our list of available modules from. So we have some of the scripts in here, but that's not all of them. Here's a description of some of the tools. Okay, let's open this up. Yeah, okay, so we've got some following tools for remote code execution, SMBexec, PS-wget, they were mentioned in a previous lab. We've got some Kerberos stuff, we've got some Windows secret stuff, server tools, SMB, MySQL. Okay, so what was the question we were asked? What script from the Impacket collection can be used in order to establish an authenticated connection to a Microsoft SQL server? Okay, so we've got two options here. We've got this MSSQL instance, which retrieves MSSQL instance names from a target host, and MSSQLClient.py, an MSSQL client supporting SQL and Windows authentications, also supports TLS. So it's going to be this one. I might try them both out though. It's not going to let me copy that now. Okay. MSSQLClient.py. I've got too many S's there. Submit that, great, okay. And what extended stored procedure of Microsoft SQL Server can be used in order to spawn a Windows command shell? Okay, so let's go and see if we can actually try out this MSSQL. I'm just going to actually see if we can locate. Alright, too much. Let's do the client. So I've got a couple here. Here's our Python 3 Impacket examples. Let me try that one. In fact, let me actually just try MSSQL. Okay, it must be in the path here, yeah, alright, so we can just do MySQL client.py. Here's a list then of our options, and you can see here the format for specifying domain, username, password, and IP address, which we have those things available. So let's go ahead and just try first of all MSSQL client.py, and then domain/username, which we have right here. We just need to change that slash around, and then the password, and then the host, which is our IP address. Just try and run that out of interest. Alright, we got login failed for user SQL service. Okay, we've got some options. No pass, that's no good for us because we've got a password to provide. Windows auth, let's try with this one. And this looks good. Alright, so we have some messages here. Let me just see if we can do help and get a list of options. That's an interesting help menu. Enable XP command shell, you know what it means. And disable XP command shell, you know what it means. Okay. Alright, let's try first of all. I guess this is our command for running a command, XP command shell, and then whatever command we want to run. And we also have this start job, which will use an SQL server agent instead of XP command shell, I guess, and that's a blind option. And then we also have this command as well, local shell command. I think that's just for on our server then, on our box. Okay, so let me just double check the question there again. What extended stored procedure can be used in order to spawn the command shell. So it's going to be this XP command shell. Submit, okay. I'm just going to go ahead and Google this just because it didn't give any info there. Okay, so this article describes how to enable XP command shell SQL server configuration option, which allows system administrators to control whether XP command shell extended stored procedure can be executed on a system. By default, it's disabled on new installs, okay. And the XP command shell here spawns a Windows command shell and passes in a string for execution. Any output is returned as rows of text. Alright, cool. So we would need to make sure that's enabled if it's not already. It doesn't seem to give you an option to verify, so let's go ahead and actually see if we can just execute a command. Let's try and do XP command shell dir, and we get SQL server blocked access to procedure because it's turned off. Okay, cool, so let's try and enable it. Change from 0 to 1, so hopefully that's it enabled. Let's try that again. We run it, and this time we actually get back a list of files in whatever directory we're currently working in. So we have command execution. Let's try that again and say who am I, and then we get back our user account. Okay, great. So we could also run some PowerShell commands in here as well. If we change this to just add some quotes if we're going to be putting in spaces, and let's try and print our current working directory, Windows System 32. Okay. I wonder if we change the directory, will it maintain that? Let's try and print a working directory. It doesn't, okay. So if we were to do PowerShell and then cd to C and then print working directory, that does work. Okay, so we can chain our commands here, but there's no persistence once we have finished the command. Okay, let's go back to our question anyway. It's asking us now what script can be used in order to search possible paths to escalate privileges on Windows hosts. So we could go through one of these modules here. We could go and Google Windows privilege, Windows PrivEsc scripts, and get an idea what some of the popular ones are. Have a look at payloads, all the things. Alright, so we've got some different techniques here. Presumably we'll have some scripts here as well, and plenty of different commands that we can nice and easily go and copy and paste. You'll see here WINPeas is mentioned, Windows Exploit Suggester, Powerless, which is like a PowerShell library for PrivEsc. Let me go back to the question again. It ends with an S. I'm assuming it's wanting WINPeas here. I'm not sure if it matters about capitalization, but that's all good. And then we're asked what file contains the administrator's password. So we need to go and try and do some PrivEsc here. Let's go back to the terminal, and you see here I have a payloads folder on the desktop with a variety of... Oh, this is my payloads all the thing actually, sorry. Let me go to home directory and into scripts, and you'll see here we've got Linux, Ps, and Windows. So let me actually run tree Windows. So you can see we have our WinPeas here. We've got some Windows resources through a symlink, which has some other tools. We've got Powersploit there, we've got PowerCat, we've got NCat, in case maybe we want to copy that over. Same with our binaries here, so we've got some Windows binaries that might not be on the system, but we might want to use like plink for port forwarding, or wget to download more files, netcat so we can get a remote shell and do some better enumeration and post-exploitation. Maybe we need to convert an exe into a bat file. We also have some other tools here, so we've got a Windows Exploit Suggester, we've got Powerless, but let's go ahead and look at how we can get a better shell then with this system, so that we can go ahead and run the WinPeas script, which is what it was asking us to do. It didn't ask us to do that, but it told us here that we can use WinPeas for privilege escalation, and now it's asking us to get the administrator password. So we could copy over nc.exe or netcat as we just saw, and then we can get a reverse shell with that. Another option would be to use something like MSFVenom to generate a reverse shell. So if we run MSFVenom here, we'll get a list of our various options, and we've got an example here, MSFVenom. We can put in our payload, Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP, our L host, which is our local host, the IP address that we want to connect back to, i.e. the IP address of our Kali or Parrot box, whatever you're using, the format that you want it to be in, so in that case exe, and then the file name. So if I was to just take a copy of this, let's actually just try it out. I'm not sure whether this will work for us, but let's try it. Let's change this IP to our local host. Let me get ifconfig up. I've got too many tabs open. I can already tell I'm going to get confused here, but let's grab our ton0. Let's paste this in here. Meterpreter reverse TCP. You could change that so it's not Meterpreter. I will use Meterpreter here because I don't think we've used Metasploit at all in the series so far. So this generates our payload. We've got this payload.exe. We then need to run Metasploit, so we'll do MSF console. And from here, if you have any problems with Metasploit, you can just run help here. You can get a list then of, you can run help on any of these individual commands. So for example, let's say search, you could do help search, and this gives you a list of different ways that you can interact with the search feature, which is actually really handy if you want to try and search, for example, by port. So you could do search port 443, which is obviously our HTTPS, and then you'll get a list of, let me zoom out, you'll get a list of different modules that can be used then for that specific port. You could do that with a service, you could do that with a CVE as well. But in our case, what we want to do here is say we want to use exploit multi-handler, and this will basically set up a handler. So at the moment it's set to use this generic shell reverse TCP, and basically this handler is set up to wait for a connection. It's waiting for this type of shell to connect back. So we need to say we want to use payload, no, we want to set payload Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP. Just be careful with this reverse TCP bits because there's two options. One of them is underscore reverse TCP and one of them is slash reverse TCP. One of them is like a staged shell where it'll just have a small piece of code to basically call back and grab the whole shell, whereas the other one is the whole shell. So it's the same terminal. I can't remember which one it was, but I'm assuming it's the one with the slash, not the underscore. Let's see. Once we've got all that done, show options, we can get our options up here. There's not too much to fill in. You can see what's required and what isn't. Our lhost is required, which is our IP address, which I need to get again. You can set these globally as well in Metasploit, so you could say, I think it's just set g lhost, and that will globally set your lhost to this value. You can then have a look again, make sure everything's looking alright. We didn't actually specify a port, so this should be the default. And then we just type run or exploit or R, and that will set this listener up, so it's waiting for a Meterpreter shell to connect back to this IP address on this port. The Meterpreter shell, by the way, compared to just a normal Windows shell or Windows generic shell, which if we just actually let's go and do MSFVenom -L payloads. This will give you a list of all the possible payloads that you can supply there, and if you wanted to specify as well Windows, you can just grep that out. So it's going to be quite a big list there. Let's do grep Windows. You can see how big the list of shells is. Alright, and then there's all of our Windows ones, so we could do PowerShell, we could connect to through different protocols, etc. And I just realized actually we're in a scripts directory, so let me move this payload.exe to our desktop, and let's go back to our desktop as well. We need to get this payload over to the victim's machine. So to do that, we can set up a Python HTTP server. You can do python-m. If you're using Python 3, it'll be -m http.server, and that's serving that out on port 8000, but you can specify if you want port 80. You'll need to do that with sudo, as you need permission. If you're using Python 2, it's just Python 2 -m simple HTTP server, and then the port that you want to supply. I've set up an alias to kind of do this for me, so I'm just going to do web up, and that's going to serve whatever's on the desktop to port 80 through port 80. And now we just need to go and download that on the victim's machine. So let me go back over to our SQL here. Oh, sorry, I meant to explain the Meterpreter thing there and I didn't. So the Meterpreter, yeah, you've got various different types of payloads. A lot of them will just be connecting a standard shell, so it just gives you the same access that you would have if you had the terminal open on the Windows system. But Meterpreter is a specific shell which you can use with Metasploit, which will enable a lot more functionality, so you can run scripts and post modules and things once you have established a shell. It makes it very easy to upload and download files and stuff as well, to get screenshots and start capturing keystrokes and stuff like that. I've done a video kind of going through, I've done a couple of videos going through Meterpreter features and Metasploit as well, so I'll try not to cover everything here. Let's just try and get this downloaded. One thing we need to bear in mind is that we're not going to have write access to System32, so we would need to change the directory. In fact, let me cd into C, and then let's do dir or ls, and we can see our different directories here. Let's go into users. So we know that we've got the account that we're using. We could go and check users there, but normally I would just go to the public directory. So you could go to SQL service, and then we know we're going to be able to write files to that directory. Typically, out of habit, I just use public because then it's going to work pretty much whoever you're connected as. So I'm just going to do that again. You can see here we can go into our documents and stuff. I'm just going to do it into the main directory. And then the next thing we want to do is actually wget our file. So let's wget http, and then we need to put in our IP address. And then the file name, which was just payload.exe. So that's going to download that, and then we want to go ahead and execute it as well. So I don't think we need to specify the file name there. Let's just try that, and then let's try and run payload.exe. We run into an error. I think that the / there is the wrong way around. Let me try that again. We should already have that downloaded actually. Let me try and see if it's actually here. It's not, no, okay. That's interesting actually. Let's just try and wget this first of all. Not supported. Internet Explorer engine is not available. Interesting. Let's go over to, okay, it is making a connection. Apparently it's just not executing it. Alright, let me just try one more time. I'm going to try that one more time. I'm just going to set that to output the file name as well, payload.exe. Oh, that's looking better. Ah yeah, payload.exe. Okay, so it's downloaded. Alright, that hanging is good. Let's go over to Meterpreter, and you can see here Meterpreter shell has been opened. We can run getuid and see that we're connected to SQL service. And if we run help then from Meterpreter, we can get a list of all the different commands that we can run here. So we can actually just run get system to try and escalate our privileges, and that'll run through a couple of different techniques. To do that, we can try and dump hashes, but obviously we need the right privileges to do that. We can place an audio file on the target system. We can start recording webcams and microphones. We can start keylogging. We can get a screenshot of the desktop. We can send mouse events, so we could force some clicks in there or stop the mouse from working. And yeah, a lot of different options here. We also have some post modules. We can do run and then hit tab, and you can see all the different modules that you can run here. Check if we're in a VM, enumerate Firefox. We've got exploits there. We can go run post, and then you can see various options that we have here. Let's do run post Windows, and then gather, and you can see then different options here for gathering credentials and things like that. We can also load additional modules in here, so you can do load and then hit tab, and we've got some other things here. So we can load PowerShell, we can load Kiwi, which is like the Mimikatz extension as far as I'm aware, load Python, etc. We can upload and download files like this, so you can see here upload, and then just hit it. We've got our option to information of how we can specify files and things like that. So this of course means that we can now go ahead and upload our WINPeas.exe and then just run it from here. We could also just try, let me just try and get system. Okay, so it's going to try those various techniques. I don't think it worked, no. Could not find a file. Okay, so we're still the same user. We could run post multi Is it gather? No. Post multi manage, maybe? It's been a while since I used Meterpreter. Gather, we've got escalate. Recon, okay. Local exploit suggester. Alright, yeah, so we can run that. This will go through and check what different types of local privilege escalation exploits might be available. Notice that it's looking for x86 Windows. So I didn't actually realize that, but whenever we've created a shell, we didn't use the x64 shell, we've used the x32 shell, or x86, which means that it's not going to find all of the relevant exploits here, and there will be some things that we're not able to do with our shell, being a 32-bit shell instead of 64-bit. We'll wait and see what this comes back with anyway. Okay, the shell actually died there while we were waiting for the local exploit suggester to come back. Let me just try that again. Connected again very quickly. I'm just wondering, did running this close the shell, or was that a coincidence? 4 exploits are being tried. Okay. Interesting. Normally it brings back a list of exploits here. I think this isn't good because we're not using the 64-bit shell. I kind of just wanted to show how that we could move between shells as well. So you can background sessions in Meterpreter. So what would happen here is we would basically create a new session to try and do our privilege escalation. And then if that failed, we would go back to our original session and try another one. But alright, let's just go ahead and try and upload our file. We want to upload our, close down that HTTP server, and we'll copy over our scripts, Windows, WINPeas 64 to the desktop. Okay, scripts, peas, WINPeas, WINPeas exe, binaries, x64. Oh, we don't have that there. x86. We don't have any releases. 1 second. Okay, I'm very confused as to what's happened there. I have that all through GitHub, so it seems to have deleted the binaries. Let's go and have a look. WINPeas, although I think it was in here. Windows exploit suggester. Let's have a look. WINPeas exe, binaries. Yeah, okay, so they removed the use releases page. Okay. Peas. Releases. This is kind of annoying because I'd like it just to be synced up through GitHub, to be honest, but what can you do? Alright, so we can just wget that from here. Let's take a link of that. Wget, we've got our WINPeas, and let's go back to our Meterpreter then, and let's do upload. In fact, let's have a look, see where we are first of all. Alright, so we're still in public. So we'll do upload with that file name. No such file. Okay, our Meterpreter shell is inside our scripts folder, I just realized. So we want to upload /desktop. Upload in. And now we can go ahead and execute -f file. Okay, it doesn't give you autocomplete here. That's executed that, but it's not going to give us any output, right? So what I'm going to do, you could use your output to go to a file. I'm going to go ahead and just jump into a shell, and then I'm going to run, still can't use the autocomplete, and there we go. So with this completed, we get our output of all the various checks that this runs. There is a lot of output, so you just kind of have to spend a bit of time going through this. And this is a similar kind of output as you'll see on WINPeas as well if you're on a Linux system. Obviously there are some different vulnerabilities. You have here a lot of path exploits, vulnerabilities, but the format's quite similar. You can see here the path injections. And it just takes really kind of going through all this information stage by stage and seeing what is of interest, whether there's going to be any kernel or system exploits. In this case, we weren't actually asked to escalate our privileges, we were asked to get the administrator's password. And Okay, yeah, a lot of output here. Let me just go right back down to the bottom there, because the last thing that we saw whenever we ran this was... The last thing we saw was analyzing Windows files, and then you have these files which may be of interest, particularly the console host history, which I'm surprised it didn't actually display anything there. Let's try and... Let's do type and paste that in. And you'll see that we get back our console host history, and we can see that it used this Archetype's backups, administrator, megacorp admin. So we've actually been given the password for the administrator. Let's see if we can go and submit that. Oh, sorry, it's not asking the password, it's asking what file contains the password. And the answer to that is the console host history.txt. And then finally it wants the user and the root flag. So we're going to need to connect as the administrator, obviously, to get the root flag, but the user flag, let me just exit the shell. Let's see what directory we're in again. Let me go back one directory. Let's go into our SQL service. And it's normally on the desktop or the documents. Yep, we've got user.txt. And there's our user flag. So this is just how the machines on HackTheBox typically work. You'll go and try to get user access, submit the user flag, and then escalate your privileges to root or administrator, and then get the root flag as well. So we now need to go and use this password that we did manage to grab there. And there's a couple of ways that we'd be able to do this. We could go ahead and use another Impacket script, like the PS-wget that we saw previously. Another option is to use Evil-WinRM, if this is available to us. You can see here the options. We provide the IP, the user, the password, and we can provide some other options as well. And this actually allows us to easily upload and download and execute files as well, kind of similar to the way Meterpreter does. But we need to be able to have access to this 5985. Let's go back to NMap and see 5985 is open. So that's good. Let's go ahead and do Evil-WinRM. We'll do our user as administrator. We'll do our password as the password we just grabbed. And then let's do I with the IP address of the box. We run that, and then we get back our administrator shell. So now we can go ahead and see we can use ls, and we can use dir here as well. Let's go to the desktop. Do we have autocomplete here? We don't know. Okay. And then we can grab the root flag or just cat it out. And that's the archetype complete then. So there are many ways we could have done that. We could have really used an exploit, a kernel exploit or something, juicy potato, for example, to escalate our privileges rather than getting the password from there. We could have used PS-wget from the Impacket collection instead of Evil-WinRM to get access. We could have used NCAT instead of using Meterpreter to get our reverse shell and MSFVenom. And we could have probably just escalated our privileges through other means within Meterpreter as well, but just want to kind of show that there are multiple ways of approaching these challenges and solving them, and hopefully show some new stuff for people who are just getting started. But that's going to wrap it up for this video anyway. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks.